Afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Selecting the Building Safety Group's webinar on working at height. I'm Robert McGugan, the Technical Advisor for Select for the Ayrshire, Dumfries and Galloway and Lanarkshire area, and I'll be presenting this and I'll be introducing Andy Harper. Andy's the head of the CDM Services and Technical Support Manager at the Building Safety Group, and Andy's going to go through all the technical content with you regarding working at height, touching on the working at height regulations, accident statistics, protocols and procedures for working at height. So there's a picture of me there for any of you that you've not seen me before. So about the Building Safety Group. Building Safety Group is the UK's largest not-for-profit construction safety group, and it focuses entirely on quality to ensure that they deliver the highest standards in health and safety and advice and guidance. It's Building Safety Group are owned by the members and run by the members for the benefit of their members, and you can see there everything that they believe in: ethical, practical, consistent and transparent with their members regarding health and safety. So Select have been in partnership with the Building Safety Group since 2018, and Select members have free access, unlimited access to online health and safety information via the RAMS software, and also entitled to some safety advice from the Building Safety Group as well. And like I said, it's delivered free as part of membership, and any of my members that are on this webinar know that I promote the Building Safety Group's software for them to use all the time. Okay. So Building Safety Group's mission is to support their members in driving continuous improvement in health, safety, environmental performance by providing a consistent, high quality professional service to ensure the well-being of all. And you can see there the Building Safety Group, over 700 members. They carry out annually 15,000 site inspections are normally carried out, over 3,500 workplaces, over 24,000 operatives, and they deliver training as well to about 10,000 delegates. They have over 50 years experience of providing consultancy to their members as well, and like I say, conduct over 15,000 site inspections per year to over 800 members. They've got countrywide coverage, which we'll just show you where they cover in a wee second. And they're all experts in construction, health and safety, environmental and welfare. And they give you a unique sight into the construction sector. So there's the 4 regional teams there for the Building Safety Group. Like you say, they cover a lot of areas in the UK. All right, from Scotland in the north, London central, Bristol and South Wales and South West, and it's subdivided into local delivery teams. Just to, before I introduce Andy, just to make you aware, you'll be able to watch this webinar back later on because it's been recorded, and you'll be able to show it to your members of staff to provide more information for them regarding working at height. So I'll hand you over to Andy Harper, who will go through the working at height with us. Over to you, Andy.
Lovely. Thank you, Rob. So working at height, most operations that we carry out involve some sort of working at height. Next slide, please, Rob. And by definition, you're working at height where there is a risk of a fall liable to cause personal injury. Next slide, please, mate. This is an excerpt from the Scottish Business News in 2022. Falling from height is still the #1 cause of fatal and non-fatal accidents and incidents in the construction sector, accounting for half of all deaths on site, followed by being struck by moving vehicles. So it's a very serious area, and construction is obviously one of those industries where fall from height is a consistent hazard. Next slide, please, Rob. Obviously, we've all seen these horror stories on site where people are up to no good. Next one, Rob. And obviously what we want to promote is the controls that you will need for working at height. If not, the consequence of the fall needs to be considered. Next slide, please. These are headline fatalities issued by the HSE for 2023. Construction industry across the UK, there were 51 fatalities last year. The year before, there were 41. So therefore, the indication is that more people are dying in construction last year than the year before. It's an upward trend which everybody has plays a part to try and bring down to something sensible. Next slide, please. And within those fatalities, falls from height are by far the biggest cause of these fatalities. In the construction industry alone, those sort of stats mar what we're seeing. As you can tell, the consequence of a fall is often fatal. Next slide, please, Rob. And in Scotland, we have 18 fatal injuries to workers in Scotland in 2023-24 period, which means by how many operatives we have far the highest. So per operative, it's the highest out of anywhere else in the UK, including Northern Ireland, Wales, and obviously England. There's been on average 17 fatal injuries to workers annually over the last 5 years. It can fluctuate, but with marked fluctuations each year, it's the same stats coming out, where it's a fall from height issue. 2023, the main kind of a fatal accident in the UK was falls from height, and that's mirrored in Scotland as well, followed by being struck by moving vehicles and being struck by moving objects. Next slide, please, Rob. Fall from height is the biggest cause of of workplace deaths and one of the main causes of major injury. We don't have accurate stats on what the result of the injury is, but it's a case of often it is a life-changing injury. Next slide, please, Rob. Falls from height account for more deaths, serious injury in the construction industry than any other type of injury. Next slide. 87% of all major injuries are caused by low falls, so below 2 meters. It's a case of you don't have to fall far to cause a major injury. That's obviously one of the problems we have is that people are not as cautious when they're working at lower levels than they are when they're working at higher levels. Next slide, please. Annual falls from height result in 4,000 major injuries, and I think that's an optimistic figure in the UK. Next slide. Within the construction industry in general, next up is over 50%. And what percentage of falls are from ladders? 30% of those. So we know the statistics tell us that it's far too high. Next slide, please. Every year, between 100 and 150 construction workers, 2 to 3 every week, are paralysed as a result of a fall from height. So the seriousness is beyond compare, really, to be honest. Next slide. A typical setup for a electrical contractor is the use of steps. There are, which we'll cover in a moment, there are set parameters within that. Next slide, please, Ron. The key legislation for us, obviously, is the Health and Safety at Work Act. And the employer, if we're acting as an employer, we have duties under Section 2 and Section 3, provide a safe place of work. Employees have a duty to ensure their own health and safety and the health and safety of others. The wording within the health and safety legislation is by act or omission. Anything we do or don't do to affect the health and safety of ourselves as well as others. Next slide, please, Rob. So we would be required to use equipment appropriately. Is this safe use? Obviously not. Next slide, please, Rob. We must look after ourselves. So putting ourselves in harm's way is not only a silly thing to do, but also against the requirements of the Health and Safety at Work Act, again, by act or omission. Next slide, please, Rob. It's covered by the working height regulations. They were amended in 2005, but any height where we are likely to injure ourselves, it affects that. Next slide. All working at height, a risk assessment should be completed. Simple jobs may not require a great deal, but more complex jobs need to be assessed in more depth. It's all about the consequence of the fall. The risk must be identified before work starts, and the necessary equipment, appropriate precautions, and systems of work must be provided and implemented if we're acting as an employer. Next slide, please, Rob. What does our risk assessment say? It will provide us with a system. For example, the slide there is of a cherry picker, but unfortunately, the operative has stepped outside that cherry picker, stepped outside the guardrail, and is at risk of fall. So supervision and training are key. The one on the right, obviously, is not a stage photo, is actually a photo taken by an HSE inspector. Next slide, please, Rob. Again, going back to the working height regulations, they've been put in place with the intention of preventing injuries and fatalities arising as a result of falls from height. Next slide, please, Rob. And duty holders within both the Health and Safety at Work Act and working at height regulations are employers and the self-employed and those in control of people at work to their extent of their work, of their control. Next slide, please, Rob. We've all seen this equipment used on site. We use work equipment to prevent falls where work at height cannot be avoided. We often can't avoid the requirement to work at height. The one on the right, the two on the right are most often used, which are tower scaffolds and podium steps. Why are they useful? Because they provide us with a safe working platform with adequate guardrails. Next slide, please, Rob. Obviously, when left to their own devices, some people may choose to use equipment which is not suitable. Using a scissor lift would have been better, but using that type of equipment can cause serious injury or worse. Next slide, please, Rob. Again, selection of equipment can be a key factor when we get it wrong. But our risk assessments we use in work should provide us with the information. Next slide, please. So planning and supervision are key. Planning is fine, selecting the right equipment is fine, but often supervision is another key factor to make it safe while we're working at height. So those planning working at height must always consider passive systems where an individual does not have to do anything before considering active systems such as harnesses, where an individual has to clip on. Why? So the passive system would be a guardrail, a suitable guardrail set at the height defined within the working at height regulations, which is a minimum of 950 millimeters, with no gap exceeding 470 and with suitable and sufficient toe board. That makes it a safe working platform. If we use harnesses to clip on to protect us from the result of the fall, we have to rely on the individual often to actually clip on, and that's where mistakes are made. Okay, next slide, please, Rob. Again, where individuals are left to their own devices, often they will use systems which are not suitable. So we have to plan what we're doing and then supervise. Next slide, please, Rob. Mobile towers. Electricians, as a trade, often use mobile towers. It does provide a suitable working platform. It's covered with a separate schedule within the working at height regulations, cover the use of mobile towers. Operatives are mostly at risk once the tower has been erected, putting it up and taking it down. That's where the hazard has been identified mostly, but all tower scaffolds must be erected to manufacturer's instructions by a trained and competent individual. If they're not erected fully to the manufacturer's instructions, they are not complying with the working at height regulations. Next slide, please, Rob. How we do this and maintain safety is often through the trap method. So we're sat within a safe environment, putting the guardrails into position, and then when we gain access then to the working platform, we then have a safe working platform with guardrails to protect us against the risk of fall. Next slide, please, Rob. And the law requires that personnel assembling, dismantling, or altering towers must be competent. Any person putting up a mobile tower must have a guide specific to the tower, and that would be the manufacturer's instructions I referred to. And the guide provides step-by-step instructions to ensure the tower is assembled easily and safely. Next slide, Bob. Inspect the tower before you use it. If the towers are already erected, then the outriggers must be correctly positioned and secured, all the joints secured, bracing members in place as per the manufacturer's instructions. The casters or the wheel assemblies are locked in position, and base plates are in contact with solid ground, not propped on anything or in an environment where it can be moved around. Next slide, please, Rob. As per this particular photo. Next slide, Bob. They can't be, you can join towers together, but it must be to the manufacturer's instructions. Any step outside that, and the tower itself obviously becomes a serious danger, and somebody could fall and be badly injured or worse. Next slide, please, Rob. Ladders. Lots of trades use ladders, electricians in particular. And again, there is a schedule within the regulations, the working height regulations, which specifically cover their use. Next slide. Types of ladders and step ladders are prescribed, again, covered within British standards and the Health and Safety at Work Act and the working height regulations. Class 1 industrial heavy duty can be aluminium, timber, a safe working load of 175 kilos. And then in step ladders, EN 131, professional aluminium, timber, or fiberglass, with a safe working load of 150 kilos, right? But if you stop and think about it, they are access equipment. So they're not necessarily provide you with a working platform. And obviously you get class 3 domestic use only and not suitable for us in construction. Next slide, Bob. And again, safe use of working height regulations covers ladders used only for light work only. They're not a working platform, and the short duration of the work, maximum 30 minutes, as prescribed, really and truly isn't the answer for us when we're doing this. Task risk assessment to demonstrate no other system can be used would be a good idea, because we will be always asked, should something go wrong, did we use the best equipment available? And ladders are definitely not that in some situations. Next slide, Rob. Positioning of ladders. Do not position a ladder where it can be knocked by a door or window unless it can be secured, where it can be struck by a passing vehicle for sure, within 6 meters of an overhead power line unless temporarily disconnected or insulated, and check each foot is on a clean, level and firm footing. Never use boxes or bricks or anything else to gain the extra height. The example we've got there is a good example of how to use a ladder in that situation as a short duration working platform. Next slide, Bob. We must check ladders and steps for sharp edges and corrosion, cracks, damage, bent or missing rungs, paint made mass defects if we're using a wooden ladder, damaged or bent stiles, feet in good condition, and no warping or splitting. Next slide, Bob. The ground must be level. stabilized ladders, if possible, as was on that previous slide, and the incline of the ladder cannot exceed 1 in 4, and secured at the top and bottom, or the ladder must be footed. We have 3 rungs overhang, so that means an overlap, so we mustn't extend above 3 rungs. Use a tool belt or even a hoist to assist us in bringing tools or equipment up to the level we are, maintaining 3 points of contact. Move ladder to avoid overstretching. Next slide, Phil. And then step ladders, always carry out a daily pre-use check. Check your tread styles, hinges, feet, and if it's got a restraining rope or a guide, check that's working and in order. It should always be used sideways on, where sideways loads are applied. Don't work from the top platform unless it's been designed for it. Keep 3 clear steps below. Ensure there's a space to fully open it, and ground should be firm and level. And it should not be used as means of access to another level, i.e., for example, through a roof hatch to a loft. Next slide, Rob. These are good examples. Facing the work area. Next slide. And not leaning to the side as per on the left-hand side. We're facing the work area. That keeps the step ladder stable. Next slide. What are the reasons people fall from ladders and step ladders? The leaning ladder slips away, either at the top or the bottom. The leaning ladder flipped over or coming away at the top. Overstretching. A fault with the ladder. Slipping or losing your footing. Step ladder wobbles due to missing feet or not being correctly open. And step ladders being used side on to the work task area. For the simple reason then you'll be pushing away from the work area, and therefore the ladder will go to the side. Next slide, Rob. Personal safety. And Rob and I touched on this before we started this webinar, and it was about are you capable of doing the job? Always keep body facing ladder between the rungs and use both hands to climb the ladder. Where footwear with defined heel, what that means is that you don't want a smooth bottom boot. You need to have a heel to stop your foot from sliding through the rung. Always keep both feet on the ladder. Maintain 3 points of contact. Next slide, Rob. The Construction Industry Scaffolders Record Scheme has introduced formal training for system scaffolding. In Scotland, we use an awful lot of system scaffold. This may include cut block, hacky, quick stage, or layer, and the details of the scaffolder's competency will be on the back of their card. Next slide. Scaffold will need to be inspected every 7 days, or anything which affects the stability of the scaffold, as per the working height regulations. It must be inspected by a competent person. This could be the scaffolder, but it can be somebody else, to check that the scaffold is still in good condition, or at handover it's been built to a recognized standard. Next. Obviously, should the weather conditions mean that the stability out on the scaffold platform is compromised, i.e. frozen or snow in this case, or even the fact that the boards can be slick with frost, measures should be taken to make sure it's a safe work area. Next slide, Bob. Obviously, we get examples all the time where people don't take this seriously enough, and often they end in tragedy. Next slide, Bob. Those planning working at height. So if we're employers, we must plan our working at height, and they must ensure those involved in working at height are trained and competent. There are basic working at height training courses to ensure that the use of all the equipment we've identified is being carried out in a safe and manageable way. Next slide, Rob. Obviously, people still take advantage. In this particular one, we're just pleased that the guy, whoever he was at that particular time, tied himself to the chimney stack. Next slide, Rob. We must also ensure that the risks from falling objects are properly controlled. Hazards from falling objects are often missed as part of the risk assessment. If a scaffold platform is produced in a way which meets the requirements of the working height regulations, a toe board will stop things being kicked away. Often scaffold would need to be encompassed with suitable shielding or measures to stop it from any material from coming off the working platform onto people below, including the public. Next slide, Rob. Obviously, we should be identifying this within our risk assessment. Safe systems. Identify the danger area if there's a risk of injury from falling objects and set up an exclusion zone to prevent an unauthorized person from entering the area below where work is being carried out. You cannot trust people to stay away on their own. You must seclude the area and exclude people there with suitable measures. Next slide, Rob. So key messages from this webinar. If you're following good practice, you should be doing enough to comply. Do a risk assessment, plan and organise your work properly. Follow the hierarchy of control. Avoid, prevent and then minimise. And choose the right equipment. It's a key factor. Choose the right equipment and select collective protection before personal. So a working platform with a guardrail. Next slide. Otherwise, unfortunately, statistics tell us that 2 to 3 construction workers a week spend the rest of their lives in a wheelchair as a result of a fall from height. So, any questions, anybody? Obviously, we'll do that through the normal way.
Just have a look there, Andy, see if there's anything on the chat. And I don't see anything on the chat.
Okay, it's all stuff we do every day, folks. So if you do get any questions, Rob and I are always here.
Okay, everybody. Well, thanks very much for that, Andy. It was very informative. And like I said to our select members, if you're needing any risk assessments, method statements for working at height, say you've got free access to the building safety groups, risk management software on there, and it's there for our select members to use. And like I say, it can be edited and adapted to suit whatever type of work you're doing as well. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.